said, after you watch this film, you will understand your mother better. That's all he said. And I knew all the stories. And as I was working on the film, I started to feel the stories. So he was absolutely correct.
Wow. So years ago, when I had the good fortune to interview you for Sherlock Holmes, most of your
Are you the London specialist?
Well, in most scores you bring in like a very unique instrumentation. And at the time for Sherlock Holmes, you said you don't know how hard it is to find an out-of-tune piano. But for this, was there anything unique that you brought in? There was always something
special. Did you see that beautiful red-haired violinist just now that played for the previous piece? Well, she was one of the special. No, what I did is basically I have a band. I've just been touring and I just got off the road, and so pretty much the band is it. So let me explain something about this score, or what you just heard. This score is unmitigatingly horrendous. It is an absolute horror movie score. It is so dissonant, it's so committed to its atonality that it was very difficult to put pieces together where you weren't going to go and run screaming out of this room. Because I didn't think I could do that to you. So, but these literally are the nice bits. That was it. But it's all soloists. I mean, soloists and one of the worst. You were asking me about special instruments. One of the most torturous instruments in the world, which is the treble recorder. And I don't know who's ever been to an English public school where we learn how to play these little recorders, and everybody's out of tune, and everybody's blowing really hard into them, and it's the sound of hell. And I tell you, look, so that's the joke. But the idea behind the whole thing is that the story is the story of a child who is trying to get through war-torn London, which is being bombed all the time, and trying to find his mother again. And what I wanted to do is I wanted the grown-ups, you, the grown-ups, to feel the same sort of disassociation, the being completely lost in the world, being illogical, not knowing how to get there, not knowing how to get home, not knowing how to find home, and having that horror, that fear that you will never find it again, the horror of these massive bombs coming down on you. So the only way I could think of doing it was to write music which was so brutal and so absolutely violent. And luckily I have that very nice, very pretty red-haired violinist. Woo, she can scratch your eyes out.
So when do you know that a score is done? When do you know, okay, this cue's good to go?
When I have a text from my producer, which I have in this pocket, that says, that takes balls.
So, about 3 weeks ago, by the way, everyone, whenever you get it, he's coming to Glendale, I think in May. In May, you need to go see him in concert. It's a religious experience. I saw you 3 weeks ago at the Crypto. There wasn't an empty seat. It was as rabid an audience as a Harry Styles concert. You had a band on stage. You love to perform. That was very evident. You had a band, and you outshined David Byrne, you outshined Paul Simon in the Rhythm of the Saints tour with your percussion and the electric violins and everything. It was a new way of seeing a film composer.
And not a single frame of picture.
That's true, for the most part. There were ocean images, but they weren't, you're right, they're not a single frame of picture from film. But tell me about that. Tell me about building that experience.
Okay, there were two thoughts that went through my head. I mean, there's a lot of backstory, so we're going to dispense with part one of the backstory, okay? How did they get me on the stage? We're going to dispense with this. But I did have this one idea, which was that orchestras are suffering. Orchestras are starting to become less relevant than they ever have been. And if we lose the orchestras, we will lose a huge chunk of our humanity. So we need So before you applaud, because I'm probably going to get my head ripped off in a second, right? So I was thinking, what are the problems with an orchestra? And I thought one of the problems was that they don't have a direct communication, because there is a wall in the way, which is the conductor. And unless you have an extraordinary conductor that has some showmanship, basically what you're doing is you're watching somebody's ass for the rest of the You know what I mean. And so, and to your point, and you have a bunch of people sitting there, it's like a bad marriage after 35 years on a Sunday morning, they're reading the paper, they're not looking at each other. So we have technology, we have screens up there which have barcodes on them, you know, that have vibes and stuff like this, that give the orchestral players a sense of where we are. We don't need somebody, I mean, I'd love to have somebody great conducting, but I don't have that. What I want to have the audience and the orchestra to have an autonomous sight. You know, they could look each other into the eyes. So that seemed to do something. That really seemed to do something. Suddenly you felt, the orchestra felt that they were part of the audience, and the audience felt they were part of the orchestra. And we were playing. Somebody said, hey, do you want to do the Coachella Festival? Okay. Wow, nobody's ever dragged a choir and an orchestra out there. And I am not exaggerating this. There are 80,000 grown-ups crying. So I think we did something right. We're doing something right. And it's sort of become a habit now. You know, I mean...
That's nothing.
We have slightly whoops. So yeah, the point is there is so much more to the orchestra, and we spent millions making a film which eventually will come out. But I promise you, there is nothing like a live performance, like being part of a live performance and seeing an orchestra, experiencing a live performance of an orchestra, and being part. You are part of the experience because it goes the other way around as well. We feel what you guys are feeling, and sometimes you're a bit like Adagio here, it's a bit largo, so we have to bring it up a bit, and so, I mean, that wasn't the case the other day. I mean, I tried to hold you down a bit.
That was an amazing experience, though. That was like, I mean... and
I got the expensive microphone.
One more thing before we go. Tell us about Video Killed the Radio Star, for those that don't know. I'm sorry, but that's my favorite song, so I have to bring you into this.
Oh, since of my youth, I was 20 years old. No, I wasn't 20 years old. It was just before my 20th birthday. I was working for Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs. I was the synth programmer. We made this thing, and just before my 21st birthday, it was #1. So that was, and it was the first video on MTV.
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
Right.
So did it surprise you? Was it like, oh my God, what just happened?
I think there were many surprises. this was the analog days. One of the surprises was that after 3 months the tape had worn out, we had to start again. That was a surprise. The surprise that we never ever got to sleep. The surprise that nobody wanted to release it. The surprise that nobody... We did this song in 1977. I mean, when did MTV come out? 80?
Yeah.
I mean, this was sitting on a shelf for a long time. That was a surprise, but but at the same time there is this weird circle where it was the first video on MTV, and this film that Blitz is produced by Working Title Film, who were making music videos at the time, and so we all know each other. We all knew each other then, and we still know each other, and it's like coming back to family, and working with Steve McQueen and all those people. It's just like, and I can't quite shake the rock and roll thing off. I just can't do it. So
You are a rock and roll star, I will say that.
I
very obvious.
Leave out the star bit,
Ladies and gentlemen, Hans Zimmer.
Thank you.